Hey everybody, it's the OGGM. It's 2 o'clock. It is, wow, Memorial Day weekend. It is about another 60 foggy degree blah day here in Ventura. And I know people are like, oh, stop complaining. You live at Site B, which is gorgeous and by the beach. And you've got perfect California weather and islands and sand. And it's like, yes, for a normal human being, this weather would be amazing. But if you have the barometric pressure, allergy, migraine issues that I have, this is like the worst weather in the world for you. I mean, yeah, sure, it's beautiful. There's trees and birds and shit, but God, oh. So the moral of that story is if you want to live here in a beachside community in Southern California or Site B, wherever it is you think I live, don't have my brain. Okay, I wasn't planning on posting today, but I saw Aaron put up a video about how to fix 5e and making 5e suck less. And because I love making fun of Aaron, because I love him and consider him a very dear, close friend in the gaming, I couldn't pass up a chance to just sort of make fun of it and definitely sort of share my opinion of the 5e mentality. I know I'm part of the problem because I am a filthy Wizards of the Coast stockholder who regularly defends the choices that Hasbro makes and regularly defends the choices that 5th edition has made and regularly says, on paper, what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do probably makes sense. It's just the way they do it. So I'm coming at this from two different points. Point one, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons as it was written in 2014 before Tasha's was fine. It is fine. The problem is the name, right? Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter where you are in the gaming timeline, if you've just started playing, if you've been playing 40 years like me, that word fills your brain with certain preconceived images. The second you say Dungeons and Dragons, you subconsciously see certain things. And 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is just like, well, bam, that's in my head. It's Dungeons and Dragons. This is what I think is going to happen. It's like saying you're going to go see a Star Wars movie. It's like, oh, Star Wars, I know, this is what I think is going to happen. It's not a conscious thing. It's just cultural. It's just this idea. Even people who don't know what D&D is, if you say D&D, there's sort of this built-in image. 5th edition is not that anymore. So if Dungeons and Dragons is fantasy medieval, I think we all generally agree it's not that anymore. It's a Saturday morning cartoon superhero fantasy campaign. Okay? But the D20 engine that they came up with is fine. In fact, it's great. There are so many things in the 5th edition SRD engine that I absolutely love. It's just, in some cases it's brilliant. In some cases I just love everything about it. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, it is Dungeons and Dragons because Hasbro, God love them. God love the fact my stock is up 12%. Can call it whatever they want, Dungeons and Dragons. As I keep saying, they can call that sandwich Dungeons and Dragons, and it's Dungeons and Dragons because Hasbro owns that word. And I encourage people to keep buying Dungeons and Dragons product because, look, that's money in my pocket eventually since I'm a stockholder. But it's not D&D. So that's the first problem with it. So because of that, people are constantly trying to fix it. I've been playing D&D since the playtest. I playtested it. I was part of the D&D Next playtest. Somewhere in that list is my name, I think, and the names of the people I playtested with, all the way up to 2 years ago when the world shut down. I've been playing 5th edition consistently in at least 2 games a week, plus running on and off. So I'm going to say part of the problem is, at least for me, is I don't think I've ever played a 5th edition game as written. Because every game I played in, people were trying to fix it. people were trying to make it something else. Either they were trying to compete with this imagined idea of the way Mercer runs, and they're trying to run like Mercer instead of just running 5th edition as written, or they were trying to make it something else. So, like, the very first 5th edition game I played in that somebody else ran was a King Arthur themed game. And I've talked about this before. So this is about a year or two into 5e. We were still sort of playing Pathfinder and still sort of switching over to 5th edition and still playing other stuff. And we were finishing off a game where we had just converted our characters to 5e, but nobody really started running a 5e game. And out of the bat, the guy's like, I'm going to run a King Arthur campaign. It's set in medieval England during the King Arthur period. So it's human-centric, low magic. You can only have these certain classes and these certain races because it's King Arthur. And immediately the first thing that came out of my mouth is, that's not D&D. Don't use 5e. If you want to run King Arthur, run a King Arthur system. Are you aware of Pendragon? Are you aware of Ars Magica? But he wanted to run 5e. And so he tried to grind 5e through this human-centric, low magic, limited class, limited race thing, but he told everybody he was running 5th edition. So every week, people who he invited showed up with 5th edition characters. I showed up with a normal human fighter because I was like, fine, I don't know, King Arthur, I guess I'll be a squire, and then somebody else had a dwarf. Another guy had a monk. Another girl was like, I want to be a kitsune. And is like, no. And for like 4 or 5 weeks before he just gave up, he would invite somebody, and somebody showed up with a tiefling. It was like, you said 5e. I said 5e King Arthur. I heard 5e. All right. Second 5e game I played, same thing. Guy wants to run a very low magic, human-centric, old-school, 1st edition style D&D game using 5th edition. So he's trying to upgrade from that 1st edition, low magic, low experience points, to the 5e. And again, it's like human-centric, and then people are showing up, like one girl's an elven ranger, I'm like, oh, I don't know, what's the simplest class I can run? I guess a fighter or a monk, right? I mean, I thought monks were simple. It's like, oh, you only have to roll 2 dice, right? Okay. But then I realized, oh no, monks have all this new stuff in it. And they're not simple. I should just run a fighter. And, another guy shows up and he wants to be a fighter. And then this other guy shows up and he wants to be an alchemist because he found these alchemist rules online. And it was just, we managed to get to 3rd level, which took like way too long because he was so stingy with experience points before he just gave up. There were other things involved with the situation, but basically it was because he was trying to make 5th edition something is not. And this kept happening. Every game has been in, people were trying to make 5th edition something it's not. And my response is always, why don't you just run something else? So Aaron's got this thing where he's like, I'm trying to fix 5th edition so it doesn't suck less. It's like, dude, it doesn't suck. 5th edition is fine. It's perfect. Just understand this is what it is. And if you want it to be something other than it is, maybe you should run something else. Like if you're looking to use a system that's a lot like 5th edition, but embraces that sort of more OSR mentality that everybody seems to think that when we played in the 80s, it was all grim, dark, high death, low magic. Is like that's a whole separate topic of how I remember gaming in the 80s and how apparently everybody else remembers gaming in the 80s, because that was not the gaming I had in the 80s. It's this grim, dark, count for every arrow bullshit. No. So it's like, if you want it to be that, but still want to use a system that's like 5e, well, there's 10 torches, and there's midnight, and there's another one whose name I can't remember, but there's several games that have taken that D20 5e engine, torn it apart, built it back together to be able to use a D20 and strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, but embrace that darker thing. But the second you say, I'm running 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, preconceived notions. And the second you say, I'm running 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but I'm going to fix it, that's you're trying to ice skate uphill. Because people come to the table thinking they want to play 5e. And yet, every game I've played in of 5e, people are trying to fix it, change it, make it something it's not. Which I guess boils down to, what is it people want from 5th edition? Because, we're most popular role-playing game in the world, #1 seller, and yet consistently, the #1 thing I hear is, I want to change it. I want to make it different. I want it to be more like this. I want it to be more like that. And my response is, well, have you looked at other games? I mean, because what you're describing to me sounds like X. Case in point, King Arthur, low magic, humans. Well, what you're describing to me sounds like Pendragon or Ars Magica. It doesn't sound like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I don't think people know what 5th edition is, and it gets worse because Wizards of the Coast keeps throwing new shit out there. Like, I've been invited to a 5e game starting next week. I don't know what to expect because I don't know what it is anymore. I don't, I've got my player's handbook that I've had since it came out in 2015 or whatever. I've got dice. I know, fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. But other than that, I don't know any of these new classes, any of these new races. I don't know any of these new rules. Everything after Tasha is like a completely different game. Which is fine. 5e is what it is. You don't have to like it. In fact, the general consensus seems to be we don't like it. We just see it. It's just there. DM Bloodworth keeps calling it the McDonald's of gaming. And I've started calling it the Little Debbie of gaming. It's there, it's instantly recognizable, and it's the first thing your brain just goes to when you think of. You don't even contemplate that there might be something else. And 99% of the people who are playing D&D right now are just because it's that McDonald's. It's there, it's easy, I can get it. I saw it at my Barnes & Noble, for God's sake. Everybody's talking about it, but then they want it to be something else. I want to fix it. I want to fix it. And you're like, there's other games. And they're like, I don't want to learn another game. Rolling 3d6? Higher the better? That's dumb. Rolling percentile? I got to buy all new dice and shit. I already bought this. So instead of, whatever, I'm going to just take this and try and make it something it's not. Well, those rules are out there already. Somebody else is there. No. Don't you tell me that that's that. No, I want to run a human-centric, low magic King Arthur medieval, but no, stop it. Stop trying to get me to think outside the box. The box said play D&D, but D&D doesn't do what I want it to do. I want it to do something different. So, I don't think D&D needs to be fixed. I just think people want D&D as it stands today to be something other than it is. I've talked to dozens of 5e fans over the past year and a half, and the general consensus breaks down to pretty much the same thing. I want to play something else. I just don't know what it is. I want to play grim, dark, heavy violence D20 like, you see in Darkest Dungeon. Well, great, but that's not 5th edition. I'm sure I could find a D20 system that does that, or I'm sure I can find another system that does that. But I really like 5th edition, and I already bought the books. When there's these alternate rules... No. I don't know how to fix this, and I'm sure I'm wrong, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think if you just take your ego out of the equation and just sort of listen to these non-stop conversations people have about the game. Not they fuck you conversations or you've got green hair and play D&D so you deserve to die conversations, but just like, this is what I want the game to be. And I'm not satisfied, so I want to fix its conversations. I think people are going to start to realize this isn't what I want it to be. I want something else, but I don't know what that is. So instead, I'm just going to try and fix what I have. Again, that's fine, but if you then say I'm running 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you've just thrown a huge obstacle in front of yourself, because you've done all this work to take 5th edition and change it into something else, change it into human-centric, low magic medieval Europe, but you said it was 5th edition. And everybody showing up is going to want to play the 5th edition that they think that is in the book, because that's what they see in front of them. They don't know on a level that there's other options. There are other options, but our brains are just programmed to just see D&D the way our brains are just programmed to just see McDonald's when we want a hamburger. I mean, the one thing Hasbro has done consistently right, and the one thing Dungeons & Dragons has done consistently right since the 80s, is find ways to work its way into the unconscious expectations of the population of America. Sure, a lot of that was negative, but it was still in your brain. And I say Dungeons & Dragons, and the first thing comes to mind is Conan, Gandalf, a cave, some treasure. If there's any girls there, I want to do them. So... And then you play it, and then you're like, this isn't what I want. I want to change it. And then you try and change it, and then you're just like, no, it's not D&D anymore. I don't want to play this. I want to play D&D. So I don't know what to expect to this D&D game I'm going to on next week. I'm just going to come with an open mind, and I will bet $1 that whatever this guy's running is not going to be 5e as written. It's going to be some homebrew mashup with like completely different rules, or I'm using this. Like, dude, that's not D&D. Okay? There's Dungeons and Dragons. There's 4th edition, which was Eberron. There's 5th edition, which before Tasha's was, I don't know what you would call 5th edition D&D before Tasha's. I would say 1980s high fantasy, super fantasy. And after Tasha's, it's not D&D. It's a Saturday morning cartoon of just utter ridiculousness. It's rainbows and unicorns, and that's perfectly fine, because that's the audience Wizards of the Coast thinks they have. And because people keep buying it the same way they keep buying McDonald's, Wizards of the Coast is still like, well, I guess this is what people want, because we haven't been told differently, so this is what we made. And you bought it, so we've got our money, so we really don't care now that you've bought it, whether you actually like it or not. Instead of people going, I wonder if there is another game out there. I've got this idea. Oh, what do you know? There is a game that does medieval King Arthur Earth. Oh, what do you know? There is a game that does spaceships and lasers. Oh, what do you know? There are dark takes on that D20 engine, like 10 Torches and Midnight. And sure, there's options in the player's handbooks and alternative rules of the DM's guide, and you could use those, but again, I'm running 5th edition. That's the iceberg you've got to climb in order to get to where you want to go. And the more you change 5th edition, the more 5th edition will fight back. So, I don't know. I don't know how to fix this, because this is the one constant I have seen in almost every conversation about this system since the second year. It doesn't do what I want it to do, so I'm changing it. Every game I've played in, every game I ran, I was constantly dealing with it, with one exception. Every 5e game I ran, and I only ran like 4, I want the system to do something it doesn't do with my character. Well, there's no rule. That's not. I want to do it, but well, maybe you should play a game that. Nope. Eventually, the only way I got it to work for me was just to say, "Fuck it, fine, you can do it. I don't want to argue anymore. I don't care if there's no rules anymore. You know what? If that's what you want to do, roll a d20, 12 or better." So in the player side, that's there too. I'm sitting at the table wanting to play 5e, but 5e doesn't do what I want it to do. But I'm still going to try to do things that are built into 5e instead of trying to just accept 5e the way it's written. Can I do this? No, you know what? Fine. Fine, you can have a robot. Fine, you can have a spaceship. I don't fucking care anymore. You obviously don't want to play 5th edition. You want to play something else, but all you know is 5th edition. You obviously want to eat something else, but all you know is McDonald's. I don't know how to fix this. I'm sure most people are going to disagree with me. But far be it for me to pass up a chance to make fun of Aaron. So, yeah. I don't think you can fix 5e because I think 5e is fine as it is. The two problems are, 1, the name, and 2, the expectation, and possibly 3, the built-in idea that there isn't something else. Had that guy just run Pendragon or Ars Magica and gotten people interested in that, probably would have been successful. But he tried to make that fit 5e, and it didn't. Anyway, I've wasted enough of your time with this bullshit. I will be back on Monday with our regular scheduled nonsense. Till then, this is the OGGM broadcasting live from Site B here on a small island off the coast of Costa Rica, or in Ventura County, wherever it is you think I live, saying stay warm, stay safe, and get out of my game, you damn kids with your damn robots and your goddamn whatever this is.